Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Today, I started a new research project about the Confederate officer pictured here, Evander M. Law. His career as a general during the Civil War receives mixed reviews at best by historians. Law was a native of South Carolina, an 1856 graduate of the South Carolina Military Academy. We know it today as the Citadel. Law was a young, ambitious, and talented. When he graduated from the Citadel, he went on to teach at the South Carolina's Kings Mountain Military Academy and then founded a military high school in Tuskegee, Alabama. All of this before the war began. In 1861, he joined the Alabama State Militia and then became an officer in the 4th Alabama Infantry. He was at the Battle of First Bull Run, where he suffered a wound in the arm and afterwards became lieutenant colonel and then colonel of the regiment. He's best remembered most positively by historians for breaking through the center of the Union line at the Battle of Gaines' Mill, part of the Peninsula Campaign, the 7 Days Battles in June of 1862, making a successful assault with a fellow brigadier, John Bell Hood. A few months later at Antietam, Law fended off Union assaults in the cornfield. That's the good. On the flip side, he's also remembered for feuding with General Micah Jenkins and running afoul of General James Longstreet. These failures to get along with senior leadership off the battlefield definitely tarnished his reputation. We'll set that aside and flash forward to Gettysburg. There, he commanded a brigade of Alabamians in then Major General John Bell Hood's division. Hood had been promoted ahead of him. Hood suffered a wound on July 2nd, and command devolved to Law, who was the most senior in rank behind Hood. Law's pretty quiet about his war service at Gettysburg. He doesn't leave behind an after-action report. He was getting adjusted, I believe, getting adjusted to the situation on the ground, did not leave behind that many orders from other officers and their after action reports. So he really has kind of, even though he's in a key part of the battlefield, he doesn't leave behind a lot, but that changes in the 1880s, 20 years after the war, when he is invited to write an article telling his side of the story in the very well-known Battles and Leaders of the Civil War series, which was published in the Century magazine. I know you students of the Civil War know about it. It is really an amazing primary source record, and I urge all of you who are interested in the war to read about it. Again, as I mentioned, published in the 1880s. Law's story is called The Struggle for Round Top. And so in his telling, Law describes how he sent couriers to scout out the area in his front, and then he gets their reports and then reports his concerns about making a frontal attack to Hood, who is still in command. Law also offers Hood an option. He says, hey, instead of going for the frontal, let's move around to the right and attack that way. In the article, Law then goes on to criticize Lee, which is an unusual public scolding of the revered general in command of the Army of Northern Virginia. I want to read the relevant passage to you to give you, in his own words, what Law has to say about his objections, his suggestion of a better way to attack, ultimately Little Round Top, and then the criticism of Lee about Gettysburg. So here we go. Quote, I found General Hood on the ridge where his line had been formed, communicated to him the information I had obtained, and pointed out the ease with which a movement by the right flank might be made. He, Hood, coincided fully in my views, but said that his orders were positive to attack in front. as soon as the left of the corps should get into position. I therefore entered a formal protest against a direct attack on the grounds, one, that the great natural strength of the enemy's position in our front rendered the result of a direct assault extremely uncertain; two, that even if successful, the victory would be purchased at too great a sacrifice of life, and our troops would be in no condition to improve it; three, that a front attack was unnecessary. The occupation of Round Top, that's Big Round Top, during the night by moving upon it from the south, and the extension of our right wing from that point across the enemy's left and rear, being not only practicable but easy; four, that such a movement would compel a change of front on the part of the enemy, the abandonment of his strong position on the heights, and force him to attack us in position. The story continues. Law's story continues. General Hood called up Captain Hamilton of his staff and requested me to repeat the protest to him and the grounds on which it was made. Can imagine all this going down as the attack is getting ready to unfold. We're still probably minutes, maybe, I don't know, an hour or so away from the attack, I can imagine. And Little Round Top is still generally sort of vacant at this moment. So Hood calls up Hamilton, asked him to make the request. He then directed Captain Hamilton to find General Longstreet as quickly as possible and deliver the protest, and to say to him that Hood endorsed it fully. Hamilton, the aide, rode off at once, but in about 10 minutes returned, accompanied by a staff officer of General Longstreet, who said to General Hood, in my hearing, General Longstreet orders that you begin the attack at once. Hood turned to me and merely said, you hear the order? I at once moved my brigade to the assault. I do not know whether the protest ever reached General Lee. From the brief interval that elapsed between the time it was sent to General Longstreet and the receipt of the order to begin the attack, I am inclined to think it did not. General Longstreet has since said that he repeatedly advised against a front attack and suggested a movement by our right flank. He may have thought, after the rejection of this advice by General Lee, that it was useless to press the matter further. So there you go. You have that passage. I want to read a little bit more to you, because now Law has basically said, hey, I was against this, but I did it anyway because orders are orders, which is what a good soldier is going to do. He said his piece, he was overruled, and now he's going in. So here's Law. I want to read this other brief passage just to give you a sense of the rest of the story from Law's perspective, and then, of course, the criticism of Lee. Law continues, quote, just here, Round Tops, the Battle of Gettysburg was lost to the Confederate arms. It is useless to speculate upon the turn affairs might have taken if the Confederate cavalry had been in communication with the rest of the army, and if General Stuart had kept General Lee informed, as he should have done, of the movements of the Federal Army. This is an argument that you students of the Civil War are very familiar with. Law continues, in considering the causes of the Confederate failure on that particular field, we must take the situation just as we find it. And the situation was as follows. The advance of the two armies encountered each other on the 1st of July. An engagement ensued in which the Confederates were victorious. The Federal troops retired through Gettysburg and took position along the height east of the town, a position which, if properly defended, was practicably impregnable to a direct attack. The whole matter then resolves itself into this. General Lee failed at Gettysburg on the 2nd and 3rd of July because he made his attack precisely where his enemy wanted him to make it, and was most fully prepared to receive it. Even had he succeeded in driving the Federal Army from its strong position by a general and simultaneous assault along the whole front, which was the only possible chance of success in that direction, he would have found his army in very much the same condition in which Pyrrhus found his when, after driving the Romans from the field of Asculum, he exclaimed, "Another such victory, and I am undone." So there you have the passage from General Evander M. Law's essay in the Battles and Leaders series of Round Top, What Might Have Been, his concerns it expressed about that frontal attack, and his criticism of General Lee after the war. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.